Here's why Aegon turned on his own mother after becoming king. The boy who once clung to his mother's side became the king who no longer needed her. When Aegon II Targaryen was crowned King of Westeros, Queen Alicent Hightower thought her years of sacrifice, manipulation, and ruthless ambition had finally paid off. She had schemed in silence, played the dutiful wife to King Viserys, and built the foundation for her son's ascent. But when Aegon placed the crown upon his head and the realm bent the knee, something changed. The boy she had fought for was gone. In his place stood a king who saw his own mother not as an ally, but as an obstacle. This is the story of how Aegon turned on Queen Alicent. Today we'll break down how Alicent shaped Aegon into a weapon against Rhaenyra, why Aegon resented his mother even before his coronation, how power and paranoia poisoned their bond, and why their fractured relationship set the stage for the bloodiest civil war Westeros had ever seen. Because in the Game of Thrones, there are no lasting allies, only crowns, daggers, and betrayal. Let's unravel how the boy who owed everything to his mother became the man who cast her aside. Alicent's son, her weapon. To understand why Aegon turned on Alicent, we must first understand how deeply she shaped him. Aegon Targaryen was not born a king. He was born a pawn. From the moment he took his first breath, Alicent's father, Otto Hightower, whispered in her ear that her son's destiny was to rule. While King Viserys declared Rhaenyra his heir, Otto and Alicent plotted in silence. They raised Aegon not as a child, but as a rival claimant. Alicent told Aegon that the Iron Throne was his birthright, that Rhaenyra's claim was an insult, that one day he would have to take what was his by fire and blood. But this upbringing came at a cost. Aegon grew resentful, not just of Rhaenyra, but of his own mother. Alicent was not nurturing. She was demanding. While other children played, Aegon was reminded daily of his destiny. He was pushed, scolded, and measured against the impossible standard of kingship. Even in his youth, Aegon was reckless, indulgent, and wild, a boy who preferred drink and pleasure to duty. Yet Alicent never relented. Every mistake he made, every scandal whispered about in the court, she treated as a stain on the crown he did not yet wear. To Aegon, his mother was less a parent and more a jailer. But when King Viserys died and Alicent seized her moment, crowning her son in defiance of Rhaenyra, Aegon felt something he had never felt before: power. And power changes everything. The crown and the divide. When Aegon was crowned in the Dragon Pit, the realm shook. The cheers of the crowd were deafening. The sight of Sunfire's golden wings filled the sky. For the first time, Aegon didn't feel like a pawn in his mother's schemes. He was king, and kings do not share power. Almost immediately, the cracks between Aegon and Alicent began to show. Alicent expected gratitude. She expected her son to rule with her at his side, listening to her counsel, obeying her guidance. After all, she had risked everything to put him on the throne. But Aegon had other ideas. He began favoring the advice of Ser Criston Cole, his Kingsguard and closest confidant, over his mother's. He surrounded himself with sycophants who encouraged his indulgence. Most of all, he resented how Alicent still spoke to him as though he were a boy. Aegon was king now. He didn't need her. The tension between them grew worse during council meetings. Alicent pushed for diplomacy with Rhaenyra, believing that war could be avoided. Aegon saw this as weakness. He had been mocked his entire life, called unworthy, called a usurper. Now that he sat the throne, he wanted vengeance, not compromise. This was the first major fracture. Alicent wanted control. Aegon wanted independence. Every time she reminded him of his duty, Aegon remembered the years she spent pushing him, judging him, and making him feel like he would never be enough. And now, he had the power to push back. In private, Aegon mocked her influence. In public, he ignored her counsel. And soon, whispers began spreading through the Red Keep. The king and his mother were no longer united, and that rift was about to become a chasm. The resentment boils over. If Aegon's coronation had been a rebirth, it was also the beginning of open rebellion against his mother. Alicent continued to treat him as though she were still the true ruler. She attended council meetings, spoke with the authority of a queen, and expected deference from her son. But Aegon resented every moment of it. The more she reminded him of what he owed her, the more he despised her. In Aegon's mind, he was no longer her child. He was the king of the Seven Kingdoms. And a king who bends to his mother is no king at all. The breaking point came when Alicent urged restraint in the coming conflict with Rhaenyra. She argued that bloodshed could be avoided. Aegon exploded. He accused her of weakness, of coddling him his entire life, of never believing he was strong enough to rule without her hand guiding him. For the first time, Aegon defied her openly in front of the council. He made decisions without consulting her. He appointed men loyal to himself, not to House Hightower. He pushed Otto, his grandfather and Alicent's greatest ally, to the margins of power. And then, in the ultimate betrayal, Aegon began confiding more in Ser Criston Cole and Larry Strong than in Alicent herself. This was the moment Alicent realized the truth. She had spent her life fighting for her son to sit the Iron Throne, only to be cast aside the moment he claimed it. And Aegon? He felt nothing but satisfaction in watching the woman who had ruled over his childhood lose her grip on his reign. This was not just rebellion. This was vengeance. For every lecture, for every command, for every moment Alicent made him feel small. Now he was the one with the power to make her feel it. A king alone. But Aegon's triumph over his mother came at a cost. By turning against Alicent, Aegon also turned against the very foundation of his rule. The Greens were strongest when united, and Alicent was the glue that held them together. She was the calculating mind behind the coup. She was the one who commanded loyalty from the Hightowers and half the court. Without her influence, Aegon's reign became erratic. He drank more. He indulged more. He surrounded himself with flatterers instead of true advisors. Alicent watched in quiet despair as her son unraveled. She tried to reach him, to remind him that he was not invincible. But Aegon no longer listened. In his mind, her warnings were nothing more than the same suffocating control she had exercised his entire life. And so, the gap between them widened until it became a canyon. When the Dance of the Dragons erupted in full, Aegon didn't even tell Alicent half of his plans. He treated her less like a mother and more like a relic of his past, useful only when she agreed with him, irrelevant when she didn't. She had raised a king who despised her because, in her quest to shape him into a ruler, she had forgotten to be his mother. In the end, his greatest act of defiance wasn't crowning himself over Rhaenyra. It was looking Alicent in the eyes, sitting the Iron Throne, and silently declaring. Because their relationship was built not on love, but on control. Alicent had spent his entire life molding him into a weapon, only to discover that weapons, once unleashed, do not obey their makers.